Hi, I'm Kianda and I'm coming from the Mambo Room Cultural Dance and Event Center in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm going to be talking about salsa today in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. Salsa has a rich history from many different countries in Latin America as well as the continent of Africa. Because this is going to be a short presentation, I hope that this inspires you to continue to learn and listen to salsa music and learn about the history and the music and the dance. There is so much to it, it's hard to fit everything into one presentation. We're gonna start with the rhythm and the music and the instruments, and those instruments come from Africa. The clave, which is what I call the foundation of salsa music, comes from Africa. Those instruments of the clave and the congas came through slavery and over generations were integrated with the Spanish guitar, the horn, and many other instruments. I'm going to show you now the clave. Now the clave, there's many different types of rhythms that the clave can be. The clave is an instrument. It's also a specific rhythm. So the main rhythm that we use so much in salsa is called the son clave. The son clave has two different types. It can either be a 2-3 or a 3-2. So I'm going to just talk about one today. But again, I hope that this inspires you to learn more. The 2-3 clave hits as you're going. The reason we call it a 2-3 clave is because there's 2 beats first, and then there's 3. Right? Now, why is this important? Like I said, the clave rhythm is one of the foundational beats and rhythms of salsa. So when we're dancing it, we're actually dancing on the clave rhythm. Salsa is currently a little bit like Spanish. And what does that mean? Well, Spanish is spoken a little bit differently in Cuba, in Puerto Rico, Guatemala, and in Spain and Mexico, but it's all Spanish. Salsa has that same variations. There's more than one way to say hello, and there's more than one way to dance salsa. Here at the Mambo Room, we dance salsa on 2, which has its history in New York, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now I'm going to show you our basic step and how it matches the clave. When we're dancing, these 2 beats is what my break step as I'm going forward. So I'm going forward on 1, I'm going forward on 2 and 3. This is my break step. This is the beat of the clave that I'm matching. Then I'm stepping back on 5. I'm going to step back on 6, 7. So I'm dancing on the clave going 1. And I'm hitting this, 2, 3. So sometimes people say when you're dancing on 2, you're dancing en clave. Now, the clave is a beautiful rhythm and we use it all the time. So if you ever go to a concert and people start clapping, this is one of the ways that we're like, hey, we want an encore, or hey, hurry up, bring out the band. We're waiting for a show. It's kind of a universal thing about getting everybody up and together into dancing. Now the other rhythm that we use is called the tumbao, and this is on the congas. And the congas also have their history and roots in Africa. Now I'm no conguero or percussionist, so bear with me, but it's important for you to understand these rhythms. The rhythm here goes, this slap of the conga is also with our 2 and our 6 when we're dancing on 2. So we're going, and what that means, I'm going to put these down just for a second, is that when we're dancing here, we're going, so my 6 is with the slap of the rhythm, and so is my 2. A lot of people often ask me, how do you know where to dance? How do you know where your timing is? These rhythms and instruments are that foundation of how we know where we are, okay? Arsenio Rodriguez is known to be the founder of the Mambo Rhythm. Now the Mambo Rhythm predates salsa. The Mambo Rhythm comes from the 40s with the integration of that rhythm with son and danzón. Son and danzón were courtesan dances from Spain that were brought to Cuba. Over time, different instruments, different rhythms got integrated, and that inspired Arsenio Rodriguez to create the Mambo Rhythm. This part is part of what we're dancing to today. Now, that was in the 40s. In the 50s, Celia Cruz, who is really known as like the queen of salsa, she became really popular in the late 50s. She was known all over the world, including in the United States and in Cuba and everywhere she could be heard. Her music is beautiful, so I hope you look into it. When she was becoming popularized, in the early 60s, we had a thing called the Cuban Missile Crisis with Cuba and the United States. Before that, Americans would go and travel to Cuba and to Puerto Rico and vacation. They had lots of casinos and they had lots of tourism there. When the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, all of that kind of shut down. Many Cuban musicians, singers came and left Cuba and came to the United States. Those musicians and singers ended up, a lot of them, in Miami and in New York City. At the same time, there were many, many, many musicians and singers from Puerto Rico also going into New York City. At that time, you had the Harlem Renaissance. So you had beautiful jazz musicians that were there, African-American jazz musicians that were there, who also they all got together. And now you have the birth of salsa. So the reason I say that is because I have friends that are from Cuba. They're like, no, salsa's from Cuba. And I'm like, yes. And I have friends that are like, no, salsa's from Puerto Rico. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, no, salsa's from New York. And I'm like, yes. The reason is because those influences and those musicians traveled to the United States and formed and developed and created what we now consider modern salsa. Now, there's an urban legend, just like in some of the other presentations, that they were in Madison Square Gardens in the 70s and somebody yelled out salsa. Now, salsa, if you go to like a restaurant, a Spanish restaurant, it's for chips and salsa. That used to mean spice it up. And so they were saying, oh yeah, make it spicy, make it, and that's salsa. Now, I have no idea if that's true. What I do know is that before the 70s, when you looked at a Latin album, it was considered Latin jazz, and you would have all kinds of different rhythms. Son montuno, guanguancó, cha-cha-cha, mambo, salsa. These different rhythms all had their own dances. After the 70s, it was all kind of umbrellaed underneath one term and put underneath, and now you can find many of those different rhythms in modern day salsas in the same song. Now, that's kind of how it happened in the 70s, because the kids don't want to do what their parents do. So now we have the different styles and variations. One of the other ways of dancing salsa is going forward on one. So this is called LA style salsa, where the leads go forward on one. So they're going 1, 2, 3, and 5, 6, 7. The 4 and the 8 are pauses in the center. So you're here 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. You will see both styles of salsa danced in clubs all over the world. And this is one of the most beautiful things about it. Salsa really has become its own language. I've been blessed enough to dance salsa in many different countries, and I know that there are salsa festivals in Alaska, in Russia, in China, in Africa, and just about every major city in the United States. Thank you for sharing this time about the history of salsa and salsa music. I hope you enjoyed the presentation of Moses and I dancing salsa. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much for allowing us at the Mambo Room to share our passion for dance during Hispanic Heritage Month.